Hello, everyone, and welcome to the show. Sorry we're starting a little bit late. We apologize. I take full responsibility for that. We got into a little bit of a conversation, and it was,
Yeah, but it was a good conversation. It was.
it was fun. How you doing, Lynda? How are you?
I'm good. I'm a little warm because here in sort of south central Ontario, it is very humid. But aside from that, I'm fine. And as you know, I'm not a huge summer person, so you know, I'm not I'm not loving this weather.
So we should just trade houses.
Yeah. Yeah, because it's nice and cool where you are.
It's like we're running around 18 degrees right now, so I would be perfectly fine with that.
Yes.
Where you are, because I love the heat. So I am good. I am good with heat. I need to move somewhere tropical.
Well, you know what? Ontario is pretty tropical in the summer times.
I guess.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. so so today this is going to be fun. I think we're talking about poltergeist, and there is a lot of theories in regards to poltergeist, and we usually, like, a lot of people will say, we'll hear that a poltergeist was haunting their house, and or this house is infected with poltergeists. So I'm assuming that from that dialect, I guess, basically what they're saying is that they believe that poltergeist activity is from an external source.
Exactly. Exactly. I think most people, well, and paranormal investigators included, not all of them, certainly not me or my team or you either,
Yeah.
but some paranormal investigators out there believe that poltergeist activity is, yeah, exactly that. It's just sort of a haunting, but a particular kind of a haunting. So something that maybe causes noise and throws things around and is very physical in nature. And they classify that as a poltergeist haunting. But
Right.
yeah, but we have a different definition, which is also accepted by a lot of paranormal people out there and parapsychologists. So, Kathy, tell everybody what our theory is.
So our theory is that a person can really generate or build up enough energy within them. And we hear about this quite often, in the extent of, let's say, an adolescent who is going through puberty, usually teenage girls. We hear that a lot with the teenage girls, but also it can be somebody who has reached sort of a midlife. And again, let's go with the women. We just like to cause trouble. But um who have reached like the menopausal stage, or even men to some degree, especially when especially and men too, especially when they've reached maybe that um midlife type of energy, midlife crisis. But a lot of times it really generates when somebody is going through some personal energy dysfunction. Let's just say that. I like to put it in that sense, because it's not everybody who is going to generate this. It doesn't mean that just because you're going through a personal issue at a particular time that you're going to generate a poltergeist. But I do feel that there's a lot of factors that, because it's not a common thing to have a poltergeist activity. It's not common, even if you want to put it in the external sense. Poltergeist energy is not that common. Of, like, when we talk about hauntings, we usually talk about a haunting that is our keys moved,
Mm-hmm. Yep.
right? Or I hear banging, or I hear noises, or I feel off, or I feel somebody's watching me, or, the typical haunting energy. Whereas a poltergeist it can be pure chaos, really, in its energy. Let's show maybe a little bit
Okay.
of some possible or what I guess what some of the things that they can, what people have assumed them to be.
Okay. Your microphone is kind of cutting out a little bit.
Oh, is it? Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Better.
Okay. I was really far away from it, so
That's all good. Ooh, I know about this.
You
The
know
house
this
looks
movie?
just like the one next to it. And the one next to that. And the one next to that. A young couple live in it.
Give Ken a kiss.
You are so obnoxious.
With their 3 children.
Of course, you got kind of chewy bites in.
And something more.
They're here. Sweetie, remember last night? Do you remember when you woke up and you said you were here? Uh-huh. Well, who did you meet? Who's here? TV people.
Something's funny going on here next door. Something,
We were wondering if maybe you had experienced any disturbances.
what kind of disturbances?
I don't know what hovers over this house. I've never sensed anything like it. That thing is in there with my baby.
Now Steven Spielberg crosses a frightening new threshold into a world within our own. Its form is revealed.
What is it?
Its focus is clear. And the games are over.
So yeah, I mean that I guess would be the TV version.
Yes.
Or the movie version, I suppose.
Yes.
But here's the thing: is that poltergeist experience? I guess that would be the closest it is portrayed, but more from an internal level, rather than like they're taking it as an external level, whereas we believe it is an internal energy.
Yes, exactly. So when you look up poltergeist activity and you Google it, it's very interesting because you get sort of both sides of the equation. So you get things like this. It says ghosts and haunting activity is the result of spirit energy, but poltergeist activity is also known as recurrent spontaneous psychokinesis, or RSPK, which is the result of psychic energy generated usually unconsciously by a person referred to as an agent, caused perhaps by unresolved emotions or psychological stress. It's linked to individuals experiencing intense emotional turmoil, and it's a mass form of energy not that a living person is controlling unknowingly. So some paranormal investigators feel that poltergeists are a type of ghost distinct from other types due to their disruptive and physical nature. So again, there's that one thing which I tend to believe, and you do too, Kathy, but then there's another one that people say, well, no, it's just a different kind of a ghost because it's more physical in nature, it's more disruptive. And because poltergeist is like noisy spirit or noisy ghost, right? That's sort of the definition that they're inclined to go with. It's just a noisy ghost. It has nothing to do with an agent or a person who might be emotionally responsible for its formation, right?
Well, the interesting thing is that when we did investigations, there was, we do get a lot of, or we did get a lot of investigations that involve children or preteens or teenagers, both male and female.
Yes.
And it was interesting. I wouldn't say it was pure chaotic like the movie or anything like that, but there was definitely things that were going on, and a lot of time, and that suddenly happened. It wasn't like, I mean, these people could have been living in the house, for a long time, and then suddenly activity is starting to build up. We actually had a really interesting case a few years back. So this is around the Slave Lake fires here in Alberta.
Right.
And I would say this is at least a decade ago. I'd have to actually, it was probably about 2 years after the fires, I would say.
Okay.
So, but we found this extremely, like, it was a fascinating case, and I wish I still had the footage from it, because we did have a lot of footage from that case. But unfortunately, even if I had the footage, I wouldn't be able to play it, because our the recorders that we had are obsolete now. Like, we had old cameras, and like we didn't have like top of the line type of video equipment or anything like that. They were actually the old videotapes, like little tiny. Yeah, that's how old our equipment was at that moment.
Right.
But it was very fascinating, and without giving personal details, obvious, of the case, we had a client who was going through a lot of emotional distress, and it didn't help that her husband worked out of town, and she was going through a whole lot of issues. And so we were called down there, and we decided, me and at the time, he was the team leader, I guess. And we decided to, and he was the founder of the society. And so we decided to go down there, and we thought, okay, well, we'll spend the weekend, or I think we were going to just spend the night, just kind of see what was going on, set up the equipment and the whole bit. So she told us her story. And then, the next day we decided, okay, we're going to leave the equipment running, and we're going to go out for breakfast. And she had these little dogs, and they both had these they were really big cages, but the dogs had enough room, definitely, to move around in. But she had these big cages that she put them into when she was going out, because they had a tendency to chew on stuff. And but one of her claims was that she would come home and the dogs were going hysterical. So, she would come home from work or whatever, and the dogs would either be hysterical or even in the corner, kind of curled and whining and like, that like that sort of. So she was like that, and that was just one of the claims. So we thought, okay, well, let's set it up. So we set up the camera, and we came home, and she actually went and took a nap. So we were watching the footage, and you can hear on the footage someone walking up to the cage. You don't ever see the person, but you see a shadow overcoming the cage. And this is a fairly large shadow. Now, I mean, obviously the length of the shadow would have depended on where the sun was and all of that stuff, right?
Right.
But at that moment, it was a very large shadow, and you see the dogs reacting to whatever is happening. And so you see them cowering, and you see them whining, and you see them like huddled like this. And then you hear walking away. Wow. So that was
that's a little freaky, Kathy.
It was very freaky. So then at one point, so for like our sleeping arrangements, She had made a spare bedroom, like one of the bed, like there was 2 air mattresses that she had put out. One was in one room downstairs, one was in the other room. So I went downstairs and I was just going to lie down for like an hour or something like that. And my um, partner, like my co-worker, whatever, he had gone upstairs, to spend time with her, so that we weren't really leaving her alone during this time. And I lay down on the bed, and all of a sudden I felt the bed go down, like it's an air mattress, so you can feel when somebody is sitting on the. And I thought it was him, and I was like, "What do you want?" Like, I'm sleeping. Like, you know what I mean? I thought maybe he came in to say something or tell me something or whatever, and I was kind of like, "What's going on?" And I look, and there's nobody there.
Oh, great. Great.
So I was like, okay, this is fun. And then he went down and he was in his room taking a nap. And her and I were there. And all of a sudden we heard somebody coming up the stairs from the basement.
Oh, geez.
And we went over, and I thought it was him. So I was like, hey, what's going on? I look, nope, nobody's there. And then I was like, oh my gosh. So, these things happened. But here's the interesting thing, Lynda, is both of us, neither of us felt any energy. When you walk into a place, you feel the entity.
Yes.
Many times. Or at the very least, when the activity is happening, you feel the entity. You might not know exactly what the who, what, where, when, and why is, because that might take a little bit more time or getting to, pick it up or whatever. But we were sitting outside and he says to me, the weirdest thing is, and I said, I didn't even let him finish. I was like, you don't feel anything. And he's like, that's exactly it. I feel nothing.
Right.
Nothing. There is, and here's the thing. Normally, like even with the bed, I would have felt like a presence. Like I would have, like, I think that's why I was so surprised with the indenting of the mat, because I felt, well, wouldn't I have known if he came in?
Exactly.
I would have felt it.
Yes.
Right? Like you feel when there's a person around. You feel, if you're sensitive to spirit, you will feel spirit, but there's no feeling of spirit.
Right.
So we got the rest of the team to come down. We phoned them up and we said, look at guys, this we need help with. Like, I don't think this is just enough for the both of us. I think we need to do we need to set up fully and take a look at this. So everybody came down, and, it was interesting because her and I were at one point, they all went outside, and we decided to again set up cameras, and we thought, okay, well, let's try to let's set it up so that we're just having a conversation maybe in the kitchen and see what happens, but with no other people. So it's just her and I hanging out. Maybe we'll hear those stairs again.
Right.
Something like that. So her and I are sitting there, and all of a sudden we get a phone call from them outside, and they said, where are you guys standing? And I said, what do you mean? We're in the kitchen. Get out of the house now. Get the fuck out of the house now. Run.
Wow.
Don't even put your fucking shoes on. Just get out.
Wow.
And they said that what happened is from where they were, because there was like 4 of them outside, the blinds lifted down and lifted back up. So you know how you're looking, like as if somebody was looking outside.
Yes.
Like, how you would look through the blinds of the window, but there was no person there. It was just the blinds going down and back up. And so we got out.
Whoa.
And we all did spend the night. There was really nothing that happened, particularly after that.
Right.
And we did wait because her husband was coming back that next day. So we did talk to them, and we said, look at, you know what? Because of all of the energy, all the issues that she was dealing with.
Yes.
And there was I'm talking like this poor woman had so much negative stuff happen to her
Right.
I don't want to divulge anything, but there was a lot of like premature deaths, and very personal to her, and it was one right after the other. But there was injuries, there was all kind, and so she was dealing with a lot mentally.
Right.
And our suggestion was, that because they were indigenous, and so we did suggest perhaps talking to somebody, like a shaman, maybe perhaps a priest, like somebody from their from their neighborhood, from their culture, just to help deal with this. And the last we had heard, which was probably a few months later, it took a couple of months before we heard anything back, but it was helping, and she was in therapy, and dealing with with her issues through therapy, and it seemed to really help. And so that seemed to be clearing out a lot of the energy. But that was probably like, it was like when we talk about poltergeist activity, I don't think people quite realize, like I think it's easy for people to call a ghost poltergeist.
Yes. It's 100% easy. I mean, there were two specific cases that I remember that we tackled. Like, oh my God, one of them was way long ago. We're talking in the 80s.
Yeah.
And the other one was at least in the late 90s. But the one in the 80s was interesting because they were talking about, oh, it's got to be a poltergeist. And it seemed to be centered around a pubescent female, which, sort of met the criteria, right? Because a pubescent female, of course, is going through a lot of emotional turmoil, a lot of energy, all of that. And there were incidences of things being thrown when she was in the room, things being displaced in another room when she was in the house. But when she wasn't there, none of the activity was taking place. So, of course,
Yeah.
the entire family was convinced that this was poltergeist activity. And I can certainly say that we came to the same conclusion because everything happened when she was there. And when she wasn't there, we had gone in to do some kind of an investigation, but it was kind of interesting because when we did the investigation, nothing happened. She was out of the house. The whole family was out of the house. So nothing actually happened. We didn't capture any evidence whatsoever. It was very quiet. Usually when you experience something that's paranormal, something changes, the atmospheric conditions change, right? There's some kind of a shift in the atmosphere. There's some kind of a, some kind of a shift, but this didn't happen. But interestingly enough, when she came back, that's when we heard things upstairs moving around. Sounded like there were chairs moving. It sounded like there was knocking, that kind of thing. So we kind of surmised that that was exactly what was happening, that this was a creation, an energetic creation. So something outside of that person that she was creating energetically. So that was an interesting thing. I mean, how do you deal with that? Well, I mean, the only thing you can do really is you have to talk to these people with kid gloves and be very, very nice about it and say, maybe she needs some kind of counseling or somebody to talk to because she's obviously going through some kind of emotional issue. But then fast forward to the 90s, we had a case where people were convinced that this was a poltergeist issue. But what it was truly was not a poltergeist issue. They were having a haunting. So there was an entity within the home, but the entity was targeting this pubescent female. So it wasn't bothering anybody else in the house. They weren't experiencing anything. It was just centered around the pubescent girl. But when they were gone, we knew that there was something there because we had EMF spikes, we had all kinds of strange kind of frequency issues in the home. And I mean, in the late 90s, we didn't use the equipment that we use now,
Right.
very, very generic base instrumentation, an EMF detector that was very base. But I mean, we realized that when this girl was gone, things were still happening. That, in my view and in the team's view, was not poltergeist activity. That was an entity that was actually in the home targeting the female who was very emotional, who was going through a lot of traumatic, issues in her life. But that can happen because, as you know, being an investigator, you know that when you're going through all of this stuff, you can be a target because they're
Oh,
very,
for sure.
right? They're very attracted to that kind of energy. It's like, it's like you're a bright light to these kinds of spirits that are wanting to kind of play with you. They want to screw with your head. Everybody in the house was fine. This girl, absolutely not. But there was an energetic disturbance of the frequencies in that home, enough so that we could pick up on it and knew that, no, this wasn't a poltergeist. Whereas the other one, it was dead air. I mean, nothing was happening. As soon as she came
that makes me wonder about because with this, when we were gone, when we all did go for something to eat, the only other thing I can think of is that they had two things that were at play.
Right.
But here's the thing, like I said, there was literally nothing that we could pick up. Nothing, like energetically, spiritually, psychically. Even the people that now, as like people, even if somebody's not claiming to be, a psychic or a medium, a lot of times, especially investigators, do have very strong sensitivities, just simply because of the fact that a lot of times, as you are doing cases, your sensitivity tends to build up.
Yes, absolutely. 100%.
But none of us. So there would have been 6 of us all together, or 5 of us all together. And not one, like nobody picked up on a he, she, it thing.
Wow.
Not like there was nothing. Nothing.
That's really interesting that nobody picked up on it. And yet, you're right. I mean, there must have been something there, because when your team was outside and they saw the blinds.
Well, we were inside, though.
True. That's true.
So, and she was inside. But when we went for breakfast, that's when the dogs really reacted to whatever approached the cage.
But was she inside the house at the time when you went out for breakfast?
We all went. All 3 of us went for breakfast that morning.
That's interesting.
But she was very stressed.
Right.
So, I mean, I suppose if you want to look at it in that sense, like it, maybe perhaps because this is her house, it could have left. That'd be something interesting to, maybe investigate more, like in general, right? Obviously not her, but. Yes. But in general, right? Because, I wouldn't even know exactly how you would do that at this point. But what I'm saying is, like, I do feel like, because even when we came back, even though the dogs were reacting, there was no, like, we would not have known anything had happened.
Strange.
It really was. Yeah, it was a very, very, I would have to say that was probably... like that was like, it's one of those cases, that you kind of tend to always remember. And you made a point about something too, is that when you have something paranormal happen to you, it's one of those things that you always remember. You remember the who, what, where, when, and why.
Yeah, you do.
You remember what's happened. And it's one of the ways actually that we've used to determine, especially with children, whether or not an incident is real or not real, because the kids that have experienced a true paranormal experience, will remember it, and they'll be able to repeat it back to you over and over and over and over and over again.
That's true. Their story does not change.
It doesn't change. It doesn't waver. It's, it's the only time it wavers if an adult gets to them and is like, are you sure? Are you sure? Are you sure? Are you sure? Are you sure it wasn't this? Are you sure it wasn't that? And then it gets the kids confused. But if you leave the kids and let them just explain it on their level, when, however, of what happened, they'll always be very straight forward, and they'll always have, like, they'll repeat the same thing over and over and over again. Whereas a kid that's tending to make up the story for whatever it is, for whatever reason, they will change it. It'll be a red window or a blue window or blue curtains or green car, whatever it is. Like, all of a sudden, boom, like it's not consistent.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. That's so true. You know, what's really interesting is that people do, though, believe that, because, and I'm sure it's because of the movie. It's because of the movie, Poltergeist. They really do believe that any kind of a haunting where something unusual happens or things are thrown, it has to be a poltergeist,
or a demon.
Right? Or demon. Because it's true. Because every other haunting, it's usually only, well, I see something, right? I see a ghost, or there's something at the foot of my bed that's staring at me, or there's something hovering above me as I'm sleeping. That's not a poltergeist to everyone. That's just a ghostly experience. But if something gets thrown at them, or something, is moving upstairs, if they hear noises and knockings or doors banging, they automatically say, well, it's got to be a poltergeist. It's true, right?
It's very true. You were actually speaking about before the show, we were talking about the Enfield haunting.
Yes. Yeah, that's really an interesting one. I mean, there's a whole bunch of sort of very famous poltergeist hauntings. And one of them, actually, just so you know, it's very interesting, actually. Okay, let me see if I can find it. Okay, the Seaford poltergeist. So before I talk about the other one, the Enfield, the Seaford poltergeist, that happened in 1958. And if anybody wants to research that, Seaford is SEAFORD. So the Herman family of Seaford, New York, experienced a range of unusual phenomena, including flying objects. Here we go again, right? Unexplained noises and mysteriously opened bottles. Now, this case is actually known for inspiring the film Poltergeist.
Oh, isn't that interesting?
So there you go.
Yeah.
So honestly, that is really interesting, because I didn't know that until recently. But if you look it up, you can see how it would have influenced the movie for sure. But you were talking about the Enfield. That one is interesting. And that one actually gained a lot of media attention. And the Enfield poltergeist actually inspired the movie The Conjuring 2. So that's kind of cool. But the Enfield poltergeist, this happened between 1977 and 1979, and it involved alleged paranormal activity centered on two young sisters in a council house in Enfield, London. And the house is a very normal looking house, like any other house, right?
I think it was like a brownstone, wasn't it? Like one of those brownstone that line the street, like.
Yes, I actually sent a picture to our chat.
Okay.
Yep, and that house is very normal. Nothing significant about it. It doesn't look creepy in any way. It's just your typical row house, looked like every other row house. And that one is interesting because the reports included loud noises, moving furniture, here we go, and a girl claiming to be possessed. There was actually a television series about the Enfield poltergeist, and it's very interesting, based on, of course, all the true accounts of the Enfield poltergeist. So interesting. But again, like, like any other, it's like any other house. Looks like any other house. You'd never know. You'd walk past it and think, yeah, whatever. It looks like my house. But yeah, it's really interesting. And that was totally famous. Totally famous.
I know that it's actually interesting. I did watch like a documentary on the Enfield ghost.
Yes.
Sorry, I'm just hang on. I'm just trying to figure out what I'm doing here. Hang on a second.
All good. Yeah, there was a
Okay.
documentary I remember about the Enfield poltergeist. It was a good one.
Yeah, and it was actually really good too.
Yeah, it seems to me that they had actual footage of the Enfield poltergeist and some of the voices that were emanating from one of the girls, because it wasn't her voice.
I think it was Janet, the one of the
That's right. I think it was the youngest, wasn't it? I think
yeah.
so. Yeah. Yeah.
And there was talks about it being faked.
There you go.
But yeah, so this is the brownstone, or
Yep.
what I guess what's what they would call it. Yeah.
Yep. Very normal looking. You'd never know anything was going on there.
Very interesting, hey?
Yeah, totally interesting. But yeah, they have still photographs. You can still look for them and look at them online. I mean, they were sort of thrown from their beds. They looked like they were flying in midair. All of that activity took place in that house. So that's a major case that was so famous.
Yes. Yeah.
So cool.
This is interesting. So, and I think everybody has heard about this, in the past or whatever, but with the Poltergeist movie, I found it to be really interesting is they did claim that they thought that maybe there might have been a curse upon
Right.
the movie. And
Yes.
yeah. And because Heather O'Rourke, she was the little girl.
Yeah.
They're here. She died from a bowel obstruction when she was 12 and septic shock. So that's kind of scary. Dominic Dunn, who played the older sister, she was murdered by her ex-boyfriend, shortly after the first movie's release, which is why obviously she wasn't in the second movie. Or we just brought up. Julian Beck, who played Reverend Kane in Poltergeist 2, had stomach cancer and died before the film's release. Will Sampson, who played Taylor, the shaman in Poltergeist 2, also passed away after experiencing complications from heart and lung surgery.
Ooh.
It was interesting, actually. Like, I mean, the last two, you're kind of like, well, you guys, they were a lot older. I mean, they weren't spring chickens like
No.
Dominic and Heather,
No.
But it was very interesting, in regards to that. And I mean, I don't know how other people, like, I don't know, how do you view that kind of stuff?
I don't know. I just think it's kind of bizarre because that's not the only movie that people have talked about as being cursed. But yeah, you kind of say to yourself, like, why would that happen? What happened to precipitate that? I mean, I don't know. Did somebody say, yeah, well, this is a pile of BS, or we really don't believe that any of this stuff can happen? And what about that whole television thing? I mean, to see ghosts in the TV, to see the television people, that's kind of interesting because that whole thing is based upon all of the different frequencies. And they do say that young children and also pets, they can, see and hear and experience different frequencies. And then, of course, they lose that ability. Well, not pets so much, but but little children lose that ability. But that's an interesting premise. So did somebody, on the set or something say, well, that's crap? You never know, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, they also used, in the pool scene, they didn't realize that those were real skeletons.
Yes, that's right. I heard that.
So that would have been interesting.
Well, I do like the whole premise, of the movie that they didn't move the bodies. And I mean, we talked about that, I think, on the last show or the show
Yeah.
before, where a lot of people, a lot of developers, they're supposed to stop excavation and stop construction if they come across anything like that. So if they come across a body, they're supposed to stop, and that is supposed to take place. So they're supposed to excavate, they're supposed to do their research and all of that. But, you say to yourself, okay, but what if they don't? What if somebody goes, yeah, well, this has to go on time. Like we don't have any time to lose here. This whole thing has to come out.
Just throw the skeleton over there or do whatever, or just hide it, like continue to hide it down. Right. But yeah.
Well, yeah.
So I was going to ask you, with any of your cases, in recently, how do you think that you've come across any poltergeist, or has it been more the haunting? Like, I feel like poltergeists are very, very rare. It's a very rare, unless you classify them as something external, like we were talking about, where people just sort of tend to throw that label onto it.
Yeah, I think for the most part, people throw labels onto that. We did have a case in oh my gosh, I'm trying to remember. I think it was 2012 when my team was first assembled. And there was a girl who was obviously having emotional distress, and people were experiencing things going on in the house. They felt that there was some kind of a monster that was looking through their windows. This girl ultimately did attempt to take her own life. Thankfully, she was discovered before anything, before she could pass. I mean, thankfully. But, again, was there something that was influencing her to do that? Was there something that was sort of preying upon her energy and depleting her energy to drain her emotionally and physically? Or was that something, internal that she kind of projected into her environment so that other people could experience something, and it could have been I guess, interpreted as her call for help in some way. That's something that, we never truly determined, because when we did our investigation, she was not in the house. Nobody was in the house at the time. But we did, much like yourself, like we had some weird things happen. So we didn't really physically feel that there was anything there, that there was a change in atmospheric condition and frequency and anything like that. But there was something outside the property that we noticed. I mean, there were strange things that we caught on camera. There was something outside that seemed to be watching, which wasn't very nice. It wasn't very friendly. But again, I mean, inside the house, nothing happened. We didn't feel anything. We didn't pick up on anything. The picture we took, I think there was one orb, anomaly, which we picked up only on camera. So we didn't actually see anything with our naked eye. So was it pareidolia? Was it, I don't know, moisture? We don't know. But that was a strange one. Inside, there was nothing. Outside, there seemed to be something there. But again, we weren't sure. Was it something that was influencing her, or was it something internal
that was influencing that?
Yeah. And when we talked about it, we actually talked about it as a cry for help, because, she did not take her life, although it was close. She did not do certain things. She did not do self-harm. It was noticed by members of the family. So you sort of say to yourself, okay, so was this being created as a call for help? And that was interesting in and of itself, because most times it's not a call for help. Most times it's just activity that takes place. So this was almost like emotionally, she was projecting something so that other members of the family were going to sit up and take notice. But
Right.
like ghosts and hauntings, half the time when you experience something, they can disappear once you actually acknowledge that something's going on.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. Well, even with like and we've talked about this in the past too, where there's been lots of cases where you go and you go to investigate and you realize that throughout the investigation or during the investigation that somebody is very highly intuitive.
Yes.
Or very, very psychic, and they might be just coming into and again, usually a young teen, anywhere between 10 and 15, usually, in that age era, because, if we look at it, usually like when we're children, and these are children that have probably experienced stuff from a young age, but then they kind of grew out of it, or, it was dismissed as, your imaginary friend, or people poo-pooed it, or whatever happened. And then they start reaching a stage within themselves where a lot of these abilities are starting to be developed on a natural level. And they've got these abilities. Children, the thing that young people can be very, very highly intuitive, but it's us assholes that take it away from them. It's the parents, it's the teachers, it's society that say, no, this isn't happening to you. No, this isn't. And if a child, makes a prediction that has, turns out to be on the money, well, it's a coincidence.
Yes, absolutely. That's
and
so
right, or it's dismissed, or there's an overreaction, and oh my god, I'm so scared, and blah blah blah. And so instead of just being, I get so personal, I just get so when it comes, but instead of just being decent fucking human beings, we make people, especially little kids, feel like crap throughout the process.
Yeah, which is why, you know what, if you're a child and you experience something, it's so refreshing when, and this actually happened to me, when, the parents don't immediately say, well, there's no such thing. I mean, that's just a figment of your imagination.
Exactly.
Right? It's so refreshing when someone says to the child, well, okay, so tell me about this. Like, what happened? What did you see? What did you experience? And is this the first time? Does this happen often?
Yeah.
They're believable and they're believed. And that's so important, because in our society, especially now, there's so many things that happen that we just don't know anything about. And it would be great to learn more about. But if you stop that process immediately, then, we're never going to know. And mostly it's children that experience these things before anyone else.
Absolutely. And, the thing is, too, is that when we're continuously shutting it down, and I mean, and it's like I said earlier, when children experience things, if a parent suspects that the child is doing it out of attention, then ask them repeatedly, right? Like, not one right after that next, but it's like, hey, how did that happen again? Hey, can you, what color was this?
Right.
What was this? What was that? What was, you know what I mean? Like, because not only now are you putting an interest into it, even if the child's creating a story, here's the thing, obviously the child needs some sort of attention. There needs to be an attention towards that child, right? So even if you're just, you're asking these questions, it does help the child engage and, express some things. But at the same time, you also know whether or not to put this into something that could be serious, or maybe perhaps, again, the child is seeking some sort of, um, what's the word? Like
Attention.
attention. Yeah. And if that's the case, then ask yourself, well, why?
Exactly.
Right? Because this could be on a psychological level. It could be, maybe a school issue. It could be at home issue. Are you working 24/7? Is maybe the child just needs some sort of, especially nowadays, maybe the child just needs some psychological help. Maybe it needs, whatever. Like, but the thing is, that's the beginning of conversations.
That's absolutely true. And that's the thing, that when you're a paranormal investigator too, it's almost like you really have to understand psychology. So many times when we go in to do something, that's why we have these massively huge questionnaires, and we ask some really difficult questions sometimes. Have you been watching a lot of paranormal television? Are you experiencing any kind of emotional distress at the moment?
Exactly.
Like,
Medications.
exactly. We have to know that information because, psychologically, it could be that they're experiencing things because of medication. It could be also that your environment has something to do with it. Is there an increase in the
Yeah.
EMF levels in your home? Because that can certainly cause all kinds of things, from, disturbances to hallucinations and all of that stuff. So, what we do and the questions that we ask, they're very legitimate, and they're done with, much feeling and much forethought. So it's not just one of those pseudo sciences that people say. I mean, yes and no. We don't know a lot about, all of this, which we're still learning. But again, there's forethought, and there are reasons why we ask those questions. And children specifically, I think it's great that, parents ask them questions. I think it's better that parents actually document what the children say.
Absolutely.
So,
Absolutely.
document. You also talk about workbooks and notebooks that you would give to clients. And I think that's absolutely crucial. I really do. I love that.
Yeah, it was one of our biggest tools to be honest, because we gave very specific instructions. And I was just going to say too, we have to remember there's a lot of teams that don't do pre-interviews before they go in. They will just come in and bring their fucking troll dolls or Ouija boards, or, whatever the hell it is that they're using for investigation. And, they don't have a freaking clue as to what they're doing. And these people can cause so much harm.
They can.
So much harm, and not only to the environment, but to the clients. And because usually they don't have a damn clue as to what they're doing. And, it can create so many issues. But yeah, one of the things that we had, that, and it was just one of these things, because, the thing is that I'm a very strong believer in the law of attraction, and what we pay attention to, we tend to manifest, right? What it is that, we're focusing in on. And so the bottom line is a house is only 4 walls. And no matter how big the house is 4 walls. And so when we're placing a lot of energy, negative energy, into those 4 walls, we're going to create an environment, whether this can be poltergeistic, haunted, or in the extreme cases, even to some degree, a demonic type of energy, right? Or at least a negative type of energy, because of the fact that we're placing all of that. And so we used to suggest to clients, one, first of all, don't talk about it in your home.
Right.
Unless you know what you are doing. like you and I, we're in our homes, we're talking about, the paranormal every week, every day, whatever. But we also know how to manage our emotions. We know how to manage our environment. We've been doing this a long time. We're not just willy-nilly throwing shit in the air kind of thing.
No.
We've been doing this for a long, long time.
Deflect it, Kathy.
Huh?
Deflect it.
Yeah, you cannot hurt me. My wings are made of
Right.
my wings are a shield of steel, like that
That's
thing.
right.
You remember that?
I do.
You cannot hurt me, or Wonder Woman, yeah. But with the Notebook, and this is for anybody who believes that they're going through a haunting of some sort or a disturbance within the home. So essentially, as human beings, we are lazy.
Yes.
We are, like, we really are. Once we're at home and we're in our environment, and let's say, we're watching TV or we're relaxing or we're in bed or whatever the hell it is, right? We are essentially lazy humans. Like, we are essentially lazy beings. And that actually works well with the Notebook, right? But the Notebook, the general idea is you have your notebook, and on each, now this isn't exactly a notebook, but it's my papers that I tore. I have my notebook around here somewhere. But you have your notebook, and on each page you write a different incident.
Yes.
Incident, not haunting, incident. So let's say you hear the door upstairs slam shut. Let's say you hear maybe whatever it is, like maybe your keys are gone or what, but each page has a separate incident on it. And the reason for that is because if we put things into a list, our brains automatically read the list from the top to the bottom. And so what we're doing is we're regenerating all of that energy of the past incidents. So once you have an incident happen, you take the page, turn the page to the back of the book, or what, like, you turn the page, you've got a fresh page if you need it, and you don't turn the page forward. You don't go looking back.
No.
The only time you need to look back is if you were to give it to, let's say, an investigator, but then you hand them the notebook. Or if you need somebody to take a look at it for whatever reason, these are all the things we're going through. You hand them the notebook, but you tell them to get out of the house. Go stand outside and read that, because you don't want to regenerate all of that energy into your home again, because it's like a list. It's like a shopping list. If you start reading a shopping list, you're going to regenerate all that energy. You don't want to do that. You want each page, each incident. But the thing is, so people ask, well, why write it down? Because when you write things down, you take it out of your mind and you put it onto the paper. And if you're still repeatedly remembering that incident, then you might not have gotten all of the details of that incident. Then your brain is trying to generate the rest of the incident. So even if it takes you like 2 or 3 paragraphs to write about that one incident, you do so. You try and get out as much detail as you can. And if you haven't, and if it's still, coming up quite often, then what you do is you start a new page and you write it all out again. Because you might have, and you're going to probably end up with details that you didn't add the first time.
Right.
And you're going to be like, oh, wait a minute. Oh my gosh, this happened, or this. And because your brain wants to remember, right? Your brain wants to draw that out. But when you take it out of your mind and you write it down, this is why journaling in general is so healthy, right? Because when we take it out of our mind and we put it on paper, we don't need to think about things. It's automatic. It's there. It's something that written down. And back in the day when we had diaries, we don't need to remember every single time that somebody disses us at school or is a bully, or the guy that we liked,
Yeah.
ignores us in the hallway or whatever it is. We had a diary and we used to write, stuff down, but it got it out of our head. And, chances are none of us kept our freaking diaries from, when we were, 10, right? Because we don't, and that's okay. But, the thing is that it's out of your head and it's on the paper. And so you don't need to go back. You don't need to relive it. You don't need to regenerate that energy. But the other thing is, and this is where it's wonderful that we can sometimes be lazy persons, right? Is because you take that notebook and you put it in an inconvenient place. So let's say put it on top of your refrigerator, put it in a cupboard in a room that you very rarely use, or, put it in the garage, or put it in your car, or, you put it somewhere that's going to take energy for you to get up and go write down what it is. So here's the thing. If we're sitting there and let's say we're watching a movie and we hear some sort of weird noise or whatever it is, if we've got the notebook right beside us, it's too easy for us to pull out that notebook and write something down. And
That's right.
And be like, okay, well, that was paranormal because I know that the bathroom door just slammed shut, even though there's a storm outside. So I know it must have been a ghost. Yeah. Right. But that's it's too easy for us to write that down.
Yes.
When we have to get up and walk to a place that our notebook is, then we are going to start automatically creating or generating from the paranormal and to make it normal.
Yes.
We're automatically going to go, okay, is that somewhere in us? We might not sit there and debate about it for a long time. It's going to be quick. It's going to be like, is that really important enough to go get up and walk to here? And then I got to pull the bench out and I got to climb up into this cupboard and I got to pull that. Like your brain is automatically processing all of this. And if it's important enough, your body will get up and want to write it down.
That's true. If
it's not important, and if it's something that can be changed from paranormal to normal, we're automatically just going to go, that's it, whatever. We're all the solution or whatever that activity was is going to suddenly appear to us. So we're going to go, oh yeah, that was just the wind in the bathroom.
Exactly.
Instead of being like, oh my God, I heard a door shut. Oh, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah. And we all know people that do that, Kathy.
What's that?
We all know people that do that.
100, right? And this, I mean, a good portion, this is why we have paranormal investigators, right?
That's right.
But I mean, if we can create normal out of the paranormal, or what we assume to be the paranormal, what we're also doing is we're starting to dissipate the energy that's in the home, because within ourselves and going into poltergeist type of energy, when we're in a state of panic or we're in a state of strong energy in some way, we're going to create more incidents.
Oh, yes. Well, and this way you also make it concrete, so you say to yourself, okay, this was something that I need to pay attention to. And you can differentiate between, oh, okay, I'm just panicked because I really think that something's going on. And okay, it was just the dog jumping off the bed upstairs, as opposed to...
I was literally thinking dog on the bed in my head. That is so funny.
There you go. But it's true, and when you can make it concrete and say, yeah, there's no other explanation for why this thing happened, so I really need to get up and write that in my book. That's so important. And I love that. I really think that that's a brilliant idea. Brilliant.
Right. And I think that if we could generate that idea, give it to, or, suggest it, especially, to those preteens, or the, even, women our age or whatever, whoever it is that's going through some sort of emotional trauma, right? We would probably see a change in the energy, but also too is that I really feel like a lot of that it's not to diss anyone, but it's kind of a sheep mentality, right? Because once one person starts panicking, everybody starts panicking.
Oh yeah.
And and we hear about that again so often. And so if you can dissolve that,
Yes.
right, then you're going to have less incidents of this coming forward.
Agreed. And you're going to calm down once you kind of put it into your book. It's concrete. You don't look at it again. You change the page. You have a brand new page.
Yep.
There's that, okay, that strength, that fortitude, that calmness that comes in, and you go, okay, new page.
New beginning.
Yeah, new day. I love
New
it.
day, new beginning.
Love it.
And the thing is, nobody's going to look at a blank page and go, oh, gee, I can't wait until there's like paranormal activity on this page.
Right.
Like if you think like that, then maybe you need some help.
Yeah, true.
That a paranormal investigator isn't going to give you,
No.
right? But if you can look at a blank page and you're not thinking, like, here's the thing, I'm looking at, I don't even know what's on the rest of these pages.
Right.
I don't care.
No.
I don't care, and that's the important part, because you're looking at this, you're spending your time with this. You're not spending your time with all of this gobbledygook back here, because that's really all it is gobbledygook.
Exactly.
It's, it's not important.
No.
The only time anybody would need to read it is, I don't know, because they thought I was insane. Looking for evidence to commit me. I don't know.
Oh my gosh, Kathy, that was fun. Oh my gosh, this was fun.
It's all my reading. So when I do readings, I write everything. Like I doodle while I'm doing readings, right? Because a lot of my I do a lot of automatic writing at times, and so a lot of stuff will come out, and it's just, you know what I mean. But half that, if you were somebody was to look at it, they'd be like,
what the hell
is this?
Why is there a ladybug on this page?
This line's of psychosis, like right here. I tell you.
I love it. I love it.
Anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching. We truly appreciate it. I think that Trevor's going to be back with us next week. I'm pretty sure. But we will be here, and we so appreciate you guys being here. Make sure that you guys subscribe. We really want to build up our subscriber, subscribers. We really could use your help. Share our content, because we truly appreciate it. And thanks for everything. Bye, Lynda.
Bye. See you next week.